The modern face of a tradition. As the seasons change, the summer becomes king, an extravagant and generous king. This season tells us a story of Gruyere cheese and its AOC, the label which guarantees its origin. The story begins with the arrival of herds of cows in the peace and tranquility of natural pastures. As they have had no fresh grass during the winter, the cows are now able to graze freely among the young plants and flowers. A whole range of floral species bloom during the summer season, and their subtle fragrances can be found firstly in the milk and then in the cheese. Being fond of her food, each cow chooses her own summer menu. One will go for dandelions, another one prefers clover. Like us, they each have their preferences and appreciate their vegetarian diet. Whilst the cow is enjoying her food, the farmer is already thinking of the winter feeding. With the constant comings and goings of tractors and machines, the fields are bustling with intense activity. At this time of year, the grass is at its best. The work of the farm cannot be delayed, and nothing should be wasted, as grass is far too valuable. We are in the Gruyere region, the homeland which gives the cheese its name. The same level of frenetic activity prevails throughout the countryside in the production area, which is limited to the French-speaking cantons of Fribourg, Vaud, Neuchâtel, Jura, Bernese-Jura, and in some of the regions that it borders. The hay harvest cannot wait. To enable it to be kept in optimum condition, the grass is first cut and then turned over a few times as it dries. Once dry, it is gathered and stored carefully. The production specifications impose strict regulations concerning the feeding of cattle, including the period during which the cows feed only on hay. Feeding with silage is forbidden, as is the use of other additives. 70% of the dairy cattle nutrients must come from the farm itself. These and numerous other requirements ensure the production of milk, which is of exceptional quality. During both summer and winter, these specifications result in the unique quality of Gruyere AOC cheese. It is essential that enough hay is harvested during the summer to enable the cows to be fed during the long winter months, so that the herd's larder will be filled with first-class quality fodder. Whoa. 100 kilos of grass per day. This is the quantity of grass eaten by the cow before it goes to the milking parlor to provide its milk to the farmer. With their appetite satisfied, the animals press up against the gate, their udders full of the precious liquid which is the source of Gruyere AOC cheese. Morning and evening, 7 days a week, regardless of the season, farmers collect this white gold. This subtle and natural alchemy is the center of attention. In the fields, in the cowshed, and all the way to the milking parlor, the cowherd takes care of the tiniest details. He does not leave anything to the laws of chance when it concerns the health of his herd. Being the first link in the production chain, he knows the importance of the part that he plays. The quality of the milk he produces is essential for the transformation into Gruyere cheese, a real gastronomic treasure that is made throughout the year in the dairies situated in the open countryside. These village production units continue a tradition which still survives in the mountains to this day. The herds like to walk the paths which lead them to the summer pastures, as up there, the scented grass grows like no other. In the high mountain pastures, one can still find a limited seasonal cheese production. These ventures continue despite the difficult production conditions in environments exposed to the rigors of the weather. Although they are not very numerous, there are still herds that go up to the high mountain pastures. The end of the spring season is Poya time, a word from the Fribourg dialect meaning the ascent of the animals to the heights. It is one heck of a commotion. It is not that easy to guide the cows on the stony, slippery paths when it is raining. Family or friends are all there to lend a hand. Mountain life would not exist without such mutual support. In the chalets, which can be more than 100 years old, the farming families continue the pastoral way of life they inherited from their ancestors. They continue to live their lives separate from the modern world, men and animals subject to the laws of nature. Very simply, this tough life, which is subject to the vagaries of the weather, follows the sun's journey from sunrise to sunset. This brings us to the origins of Gruyere cheese. It was only at the end of the 19th century that the production of this hard cheese developed in the valleys. Beforehand, the transformation of milk into cheese was exclusive to the mountain people. They had no other resources to provide for their needs in winter except the transformation of the milk from their cows into cheese. The basic principles of production are not very different from those used in the countryside. However, the working conditions are totally different. A genuine traditional handicraft, the making of Gruyere cheese in the high mountain pastures is still carried out on an open fire with the fir twigs crackling in the hearth. The fire has to be at the right level and one has to know the ideal temperature for the milk. Within the rustic atmosphere of the chalet, all the work is done by the whole family. After warming the milk, it is time to dip a linen cloth into the cauldron to remove the curds. The curds will form the base of the frais, in the local language, or the fruit of the mountain. That is to say, Gruyere cheese from the high mountain pastures. The cheesemaker and his wife carry out the same activities as in the past. Here the expression know-how takes on its true meaning. Today's Gruyere cheese will not be the same as tomorrow's, as it all depends on weather conditions. Scorching heat, rain, cold, and snow all have an influence on the making of the cheese. The Gruyere craftsmen, the defenders and guardians of the ancestral know-how, have applied technological evolution to the taste and quality. Whilst respecting the traditions and authenticity of an ancient recipe, they have adapted to the demands of the modern food processing industry. The milk used in the production of Gruyere AOC cheese is delivered twice a day to all the cheese factories within the designated Gruyere AOC production zone. After standing overnight at a temperature between 12 and 18 degrees Celsius, it is stirred and then mixed with the milk received during the morning. The copper kettles, which have a capacity of 4,800 liters, are then filled. This quantity is sufficient to produce 12 Gruyere cheeses, each weighing approximately 35 kilos. The cheesemaker pays particular attention to the quality of the milk. The milk destined for cheese production is of the very best. The checking is strict and rigorous. The cheesemaker takes a sample from every milk delivery. The first analyses are made in the laboratory. When the milk from the morning and the evening have been mixed well together, the cheesemaker adds the fermenting agents that are specific to Gruyere cheese and then adds the rennet. This completely natural ingredient comes from the stomach of a calf. The rennet makes the milk curdle. The transition from a liquid state to a more solid mass takes around 50 minutes. The last 3 or 4 minutes of the process are essential to the quality of the Gruyere cheese. This is when the skill and know-how of the cheesemaker has a critical influence. With an expert eye and practiced movements, he decides on the precise moment to cut the curds. As soon as he thinks that the mass has curdled sufficiently, the cheesemaker switches on 3 large cutting blades called tranche caillé. For approximately 10 minutes, the cutting blades will cut the compact mass into small pieces the size of a grain of wheat. These small pieces and the whey, which is of yellow color, are then heated gently to about 57 degrees Celsius, which takes approximately 40 to 45 minutes. During this operation, the cheesemaker focuses on the development of the granules. Towards the end of the heating process, he controls the dryness of the granules. Paying close attention, the cheesemaker checks the texture and elasticity of the mixture to determine when it should be removed. The substance which will eventually become Gruyere cheese is now ready to be pumped into the molds. Here we go. The pump begins its task. Within less than 4 minutes, the contents of the cauldron will be pumped into the molds with a top hoop. The whey, which is a byproduct of cheese production, runs down into basins situated beneath the row of molds. The 12 Gruyere cheeses began to take shape in these molds. It is now time for the cheesemaker to prepare the casein marks, which are made from milk protein. These marks, which are fixed on the top of each round of Gruyere, are used to identify the cheeses by the day and month of production, together with the reference number of the dairy and of the round. Once they have been identified, the Gruyere rounds are compressed progressively up to 900 kilos pressure. During the period of pressing, which lasts a minimum of 16 hours, the cheeses are regularly turned over. The following day, the cheesemaker and his team remove from the molds the Gruyere rounds which have been made the previous day. The fresh Gruyere cheeses appear progressively as the different parts of the molds, including the covers, metal plates, and side strips, are removed. The cheeses get their first treatment, during which the sides of each round are smoothed off. One after the other, the Gruyere rounds, which are still soft and supple, are loaded onto a trolley and taken to the salt bath. The cheeses are then submerged for about 20 hours at a temperature of 14 degrees Celsius in a 20% salt water solution. During this process, the cheese absorbs about half of its final salt content. The active phase of the production process is now complete. The Gruyere cheeses are now taken to the maturing cellar for a long period of treatment. In this controlled environment, with the temperature maintained at 13 to 14 degrees Celsius, with a slight smell of ammonia in the atmosphere, the Gruyere cheese develops its distinctive taste and subtle aroma. In the cellars, mechanization has become a very useful tool, enabling an average of 80 to 100 Gruyere cheese rounds per hour to be treated. Nowadays, the cheesemaker cannot do without modern technology. However, machines will never replace their skills and know-how. The cheesemaker makes daily visits to the cellars, as there is still a lot of work to be done, such as turning the rounds of cheese upside down, brushing them, and salting each side. Although these functions are not carried out every day on all of the cheeses, regular attention from the cheesemaker is very important. His expert eye ensures that each round of Gruyere reaches its optimal level of maturity. After 3 months of rest in the tranquility of the maturing cellar, the Gruyere cheeses are marked with a branding iron and then weighed. At this stage, each round will first be checked, and if there are any defects found, they will be discarded and will not be granted the AOC label. The level of professionalism of the craftsmen and craftswomen is such that very few rounds of cheese will be eliminated. The majority will be kept for a further month before the next important step, which is the expert assessment by the Interprofession du Gruyère. By means of a cheese sampler, the expert taps the cheese and listens to its resonance to assess if there are any defects in the product. The Gruyere rounds are judged according to 4 criteria: the taste and aroma, the quality of the texture, the quality of the preservation, and the external appearance. The committee will then test the elasticity of the texture and judge the external appearance of the round. It will be followed by a tasting and finally the verdict. A verdict which is the final link in the chain of the professionals involved. It also provides consumers with the guarantee of a perfect product, which is the AOC label.